Hi everybody, Savannah Jackson here. Welcome to the Stavely Minerals update for the 22nd of March 2020. In this presentation, you're hearing general advice only. We haven't taken into consideration your personal financial objectives or needs. Trading involves risk. Past and returns do not mean we'll make the same in the future. And Spectrum Live is an authorized representative of Gleneagle Securities, which holds an Australian financial securities license. All right, those of you, of course, who don't know me, my name is Savannah Jackson. I am a significant shareholder in Stavely Minerals. I'm also related to Chris Cairns. He is my brother-in-law. And we're going to be interviewing Chris Cairns today, who's managing director of Stavely Minerals. So let me just get Chris on the phone.
Speaking.
Hi, Chris. Savannah, how are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Hi.
Yourself?
I'm well, thank you. Yeah, we're recording the conversation. So yeah, you gave me a contact. You called me up and said you wanted to do an interview. So the floor is yours.
Great. No worries. Thank you for calling. Yeah, look, I thought it was just a good time to just give everybody an update where Stavely Minerals is at, particularly in the context of COVID-19 and our work programs, all of that sort of thing, the stock market meltdown, and really, I think, to get straight to the point, the real message is, look, we're continuing to drill. We're currently drilling with 4 rigs, focusing on a resources drill out near surface on the Cayley lode. Our people in Victoria are largely Victorian-based, so there's no air travel required. We've got strict protocols in place in terms of contact with the drillers and self-isolation for people that have come from overseas, all of those sorts of protocols that, just someone being responsible would put into place. So we continue to operate on the basis that we're in a low-risk situation. We're not dealing with the public. We just have to look after ourselves and the drill employees and just make sure that if anybody's not feeling well, that they self-isolate. But there's not a lot of travel involved in what we're doing. So we will continue doing what we are doing, being very careful until such time as the situation changes. And certainly, it's a pretty fluid situation at the moment, but we're pretty comfortable that we can continue our programs, and that's our intention. I think the other comment would be with respect to the markets and our funding position. Look, we're very well funded. Fortunately, we were able to go into the market and raise a good lick of cash in October last year, and the bulk of that remains in our bank account and on term deposit. So we will be looking at maintaining work programs, but also ensuring that we have sufficient cash balance that we won't need to come to the market until we absolutely have some sort of clarity on where this pandemic is going to. And I would certainly hope, by the end of the year, we're all through the worst of it, and people can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and just be reassured that our financial position is strong enough that we don't envisage having to come to the market in these current conditions. We certainly have seen these conditions before. At Integra Mining, we went through the global financial crisis. Interestingly, at that time, we had made a discovery. We had a fully funded development, and we were in construction in 2009. So sometimes there is a silver lining to some of these things, in that we were able to build on time and under budget, and during the depths of the financial crisis, Integra Mining went down to 8 cents, notwithstanding that we were fully funded into building a brand new gold mine, and gold wasn't doing too badly at the time in that context, and as it is now. And when we came out of that, we operated for 2 years or thereabouts, and then received an offer around 50 cents from our next door neighbor for a takeover. So I think that message and that experience really applies to this situation, is that, the company, our society, everything, we will get through this. And on the other side, people's objective view will be quite different to what it is today. And I think if you, I don't think that the financial situation the company finds itself in is at risk at all. We're in a very strong position, and in fact, it sort of reminds me a little bit of when a Rolling Stone magazine was interviewing Keith Richards, and Keith Richards is a notoriously prickly sort of a chap anyways, and the interviewer was very pleased that he got all the way through the interview without getting tossed out on his ear. But at the end of the interview, he said, "Sorry, Keith, it's the elephant in the room. I have to ask you the question. What about your drug problem?" And Keith Richards replies, "Drug problem? Only poor people have drug problems." So which I mean to say that, look, we've got plenty of money for me to support my drilling habit for the next little while. We have certain objectives that we want to achieve with those drilling funds. We want to drill out the resource. We're in the public domain saying exactly what our objectives are. And that's what we're pushing towards. And we, as I say, we don't need to come to market for a little while. And so, the share price weakness in the context of our integrity experience is only a problem in two situations. And I feel badly for people who are compelled to sell into this market. But for those who aren't compelled to sell in this market, the market will recover, and there will be better times ahead as we come out of it. So really, it's a case of, don't panic. Everything's under control. We're well funded. We're continuing on with what we can do in these conditions, and we will continue to monitor the situation and make sure that the safety of our people and our contractors is foremost in our minds. So that's pretty much the message. Wishing everybody, a safe couple of months. Look after your old people. Just take the right precautions, be sensible, and just batten down the hatches, because things will turn around.
Okay, great. I think we all share the same hope that this all ends soon for everyone's health and well-being and sanity. Do you mind if I ask a few questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
In our last interview, which was on the 4th of February, you mentioned then that we were about 6 weeks away from having results on Mathena. We're now just over 6 weeks away from then, so I'm just wondering, do you have an update on that?
Yep, that's right. So we've been getting some check assays done, so the assays are expected very, very shortly, and so there will be an announcement coming out as soon as we've got those. So it's just a little bit more patience there. Okay, right. And
how do you find the results at the lab in terms of the progress at the labs? Is there a bottleneck? Is there a slowdown at the labs because of the virus or other issues? Or is the labs getting through the assays quickly?
Yeah, look, I did hear someone mention that there was discussion on Hotcopper about lab turnaround times. It's not something that we've been contacted by the lab to say that assay times are blowing up because they've got personnel shortages or anything like that. I think the way that a lab works is that they can exercise a degree of social distancing. They can. So anyways, the long and the short of it is we haven't seen it. They haven't contacted us to tell us that is the case. I'm certain that they would have. We're a reasonable client and have been for some time. I think it's fake news.
Okay. And so, obviously there's a few more people making comments on Hotcopper saying things like, we originally, with 4 or 5 drill rigs going, and you just said there's now 4, we were expecting results on a sort of a bi-weekly or every 3-week sort of basis, but it's now been sort of 6 weeks since we've had the last announcement. So I just want to give people some feedback as to what they can expect going forward in terms of the average time between announcements.
Sure. I think our last announcement, and just off the top of my head, might have been the 17th of February, so we're about a month out from the last announcement, not 6 weeks. But look, what we're trying to do is we don't want to be putting out hole-by-hole results, and I'm on the record having said that in our previous discussion and elsewhere. But I think it's appropriate that what we put out in terms of results shows a balanced view of what's going on. Typically, if you would describe the drill results to date, we have some quite broad intervals of reasonably good grade and also narrower zones of higher grade material. And I think that if we were to release hole by hole, it introduces a degree of volatility in the share price that's not good for anybody. I think that if we're releasing 4 holes at a time or what have you, that it provides a more balanced view on each announcement, and that we'll get a more measured view of the incremental growth of the resource and how it's firming up. As a general comment, I'd like to say that we're very pleased with how consistent mineralization has been. And look, it's just a matter of going through the paces. I know that people are impatient, but the body of work will build over time, and it's looking very, very good. It's on the other hand, and this is not what drives our strategy in terms of releases at all, but I do make the observation that you wonder what a good announcement is going to do in this current market anyways, whether it's going to get any airplay or what have you. So it's a frustrating market in that sense, and we've flagged that we've got some nice intercepts in at the lab at the moment, and we genuinely want to see those results and bring them out to the market. But you do have to question what kind of traction we're going to get, even with the sort of results that we're looking at coming through.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everyone realizes it could be, who knows, weeks, months before we have any semblance of an idea of where this whole market's going to go and how the virus is going to be dealt with. So it's going to be a lot of uncertainty for a long time, I think.
Yeah, look, and that's exactly right, and that's probably the fundamental issue in the market is markets hate uncertainty, and in that respect, the general market mood is very negative. But if you look at Stavely Minerals' situation, our situation is pretty stable. We're doing exactly what we said we would do. We've got a new discovery, and we're drilling out a resource. We're well funded. We're in a first world jurisdiction. We don't have a lot of airfare because we've got locally employed geologists and field assistants, local contractor. So we're actually in a pretty stable position. So I think when the market sort of does decide, okay, well, maybe the worst is over, I think we're well placed to benefit from a rebound in the market when certainly we're hearing stories now of China getting back to work and the factories starting up again. So I think we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, certainly for those countries that have been at the forefront of it. As Donald Trump calls it, the China virus, which I think is a little bit unfortunate and probably insensitive. But the truth is that they're now talking about coming out the other side of it. So that will be the same for Italy and the US and every other industrialized country. And then demand picks up, and everybody's going to go, oh, where are we going to get the copper from? And away we go again. So it's just one of those situations where the market gets oversold, and you're not in trouble unless either you have to sell shares or you have to raise capital. Otherwise, we can continue on and wait until we come out the other side. Excellent.
And now, what do you say to the potential, like in the last interview and in interviews before, you talked about potentially hiving Mathena off and listing it on its own and having an in-species distribution. Given the current market environment, do you think those plans would be put on hold, given the fact that you're going to have Mathena results reasonably soon?
Yeah, look, I think that's correct. This is not a market where we're going to get fair value for those assets, notwithstanding that gold is looking pretty good. Everyone's at the moment just ducking for cover. I don't think anyone would consider an IPO at the moment unless you're making ventilators or medical supplies. But otherwise, no, we'll be prudent in that respect. There's no sense in us spending a whole bunch of money going headlong into an IPO that has a very remote chance of being successful in this market. So, on ice is right.
On ice. But you'll still obviously bring out the results from the Mathena drill results.
Yes, we will.
Yeah. And a bit of a comment, again, on Hotcopper, people questioning the speed at which the results are coming out in terms of what do you say to, the management sitting on results until, there's a better time? Or do you as management get the results out basically as soon as you receive them?
No, as I say, look, I can see where people are coming from there with respect to my comments regarding whether you're getting traction in this market, but we're not sitting on results per se. We just want to be able to produce our results in the context of a reasonable batch of results, so that it does give people a balanced view of what it is we're seeing. It's just the way that we were sequencing, and we sort of fired up with additional drill rigs. We didn't have the people on board to process the core, so a lot of core got backed up, and they've put on more people and been working through the backlog for some time. But there is a lot of material at the lab, and it'll come. I'll just say to people, please be patient. It's coming through. We flagged that we've got some nice holes in at the lab. It'll come through, and we'll announce it when it does come through.
Great. How's the sonic rig going? Are you getting much better core results? I think I was reading in the latest annual report that the core recovery has been substantially improved.
Yeah, that's right. So the sonic rig has suffered from a number of mechanical breakdowns. I suppose the nature of the beast is that it works on high frequency vibration, and so it tends to shake itself to shit. And the mechanical availability has been a bit frustrating, but it does get 100% recovery. With the diamond rigs, however, we have had a serious focus on drilling mud management and educating the drillers as to how to deal with the varying and changing ground conditions. And the diamond drill recoveries have gone increased spectacularly. So, really big effort by the drillers, and it's showing in the results now. So, no, we're in a comfortable position with those rigs. We're working on the more reliability issues with the sonic rigs, so that there are programs in place for that. But otherwise, the diamond rigs are performing very well, and the ore body is behaving itself. So we're in a nice place, notwithstanding the panic. And look, I think if there's any singular message, it is, if you don't have to sell, great. Sit back, put the shares in the bottom drawer. We'll all come through this, and things will be looking a lot better by the end of the year, as far as I'm concerned. So let's ride it out, and we've got news flow coming, and we're not locking up shop. We're not closing the doors. The government's announcing a number of measures to keep people in work, and we'll be reviewing our position with respect to that. We may be able to get some additional government support for keeping our people working, and really that's what we want to do for as long as we can.
Great. And are you still doing, sorry, what was I going to say? You're doing a lot of the shallow drilling. How many more drill holes do you expect to be doing on sort of a shallow basis before you start going deeper again?
Yeah, look, we've just had a bit of a review of where we're at and how many more holes. I think the shallow resource drilling should be finished by May. That's been our objective, and that kind of coincides with the weather as well. With respect to the farmers typically sow after Anzac Day weekend, expecting to get early May rains for germination. and our objective was to try and get all of that shallow stuff done by that time. That means that if we go into a deeper program of drilling after that point in time, that means we have less rig moves per rig per week, for example, and it's just easier logistically working in wet conditions if the rigs are drilling deeper holes.
Cool. And will you, let's say this virus concern and uncertainty continues for 3 to 4 or 5 months, and things get worse with the death numbers and the cases, etc. Will you slow down the rig performance, or will you slow down the number of holes you're drilling in order to extend out the lifetime of how much cash you have left before you need to raise more capital? I think some people are a bit nervous about potentially having to go back to the market for another capital raise by the end of this year, when we could still be in a very difficult market environment.
Look, I think their concerns are very pertinent, and look, we've been through this situation before, as I say, with the financial crisis. We're not going to set the company up to have to raise money in a struggling market. We're going to take a pretty pragmatic view of where we're at relative to what we want to achieve on the ground and what our bank balance is looking like. We're shareholders as well, and we would be very reluctant to go into a highly dilutive capital raise before the end of the year. So certainly it's an active program. As I say, the situation is quite fluid, but we'll be actively monitoring that balance between activities and cash balance, and we'll be ensuring that to the best of our abilities, we're not going into this market with that highly dilutive capital raising. But having said that, we also want to achieve a couple of milestones with respect to the resource and also some deeper drilling. So it's just a balancing act. And look, we're in a situation that would be the envy of many other companies, because we do have the ability to achieve both in terms of capital preservation and achieving meaningful programs on the ground at the same time. So we're in a good spot.
Excellent. And what would you say? There's been, again, some more comments on Hotcopper. Comments along the lines that the results to date have actually not been all that great in terms of the quality of the grade. That the resources found so far are sort of scattered here and there, and they don't collectively make up a decent enough size of a potential mine to be sold off to a larger company. What would you like to say to that?
Okay, well, probably I'll deal with two things. The grades are good. You can measure them against other copper mines elsewhere, and no, they look good to us. The other comment that it's scattered and that sort of thing is, look, I'm not going to mince words. It is a crock of shit, and whoever's saying that just does not know their arse from their elbow. Every hole pretty much has got mineralization in it. There were 2 holes that did not, and both of those down in the south, I believe it was hole 53 and maybe 57, or just off the top of my head. And it was clear that the low angle structure had offset the contact, and that the drill hole went through into the ultramafic before touching the ultramafic contact there in both of those cases. And we drilled in front of one of those holes, I think it was 53, and got mineralization. So it demonstrates, it vindicated what we were saying with respect to that hole. Every other hole has hit mineralization. So the hit rate is exceedingly high. As I say, the ore body is behaving itself, and gee, there's some shit on Hotcopper.
I agree. I just thought it's great for those who believe in the company, who are shareholders, who aren't just posting comments without even being shareholders themselves. It's great to hear it directly from you, rather than hearing some of the comments on that forum.
Look, I think, again, I won't mince swear words. Opinions are like ourselves. Everyone's got one, and some of them are louder than others. And
some like to keep posting the same thing over and over and over again. just to hear them, just to hear a comment. I think some people just post comments just to create a bit of a noise and get other people riled up. But no, this is why I love these interviews, because we can just hear it directly from you. And I don't try to hold back on questions. I mean, I'm a major shareholder too, and I want to see the company succeed. But at the same time, we need to know reality, not fluff. And I think it's great.
Absolutely, and I think one of the things that is often lost in those forum discussions is that the management team are significant shareholders in their own right, like really significant in terms of my personal net wealth. A very large proportion of it sits in Stavely stock, and other than as required by the family court, I have never sold a share. So there's absolutely. Oh, and the other comment is that, look, we're not novices at this. We've done this before. We get the best advice that is available to us, and there's no way that we're going to act in any way other than the best interests of shareholders, because we share their pain. So, I think any suggestion that we would act otherwise completely disregards the reality of our holdings and our experience. So, yeah.
I totally agree. I mean, I've been a huge supporter of yours for years now, and I think there's a lot of people who are shareholders who are massive supporters and fans of both you, the company, and the project. So, yeah, thank you for that outline.
Yeah. Look, we're all in it together, I think is that sort of message. We're in the same boat, and there's no sinister or other objective other than to get the company through this, get us out onto the other side, see the price recoveries in the general market, and hopefully we're a very major beneficiary of that, and we're delivering progress on the project. And look, people who don't think that the deposit hangs together or the grade is good, well, let's wait until the resource comes out, and then they can be judged on that. We're going to be have to be transparent about it. That's just the way these things work. And probably the more informed commentators who are know their stuff in the market, people like analysts in some of the broking firms, Morgans and Hartley's, the supporters, are thinking that this is a great discovery. We wouldn't have won the Craig Oliver Award, for example, if this thing was a dog. So, I mean, it just befuddles me. But, I would hope that people are not easily rattled by those sorts of comments from uninformed, opinion.
Exactly. It's just so long as people can see through noise and hear, what they think is the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
With now, do you want to make a comment just on that too? I'm just thinking there's another comment on there saying, "Oh, the copper price is crashing. There's no future for Stavely. The whole company is screwed because the short-term pricing of current commodity prices." In your view, I mean, I already know the answer, but in your view, what would you say to the people who are concerned about the falling values of copper, for example?
They should adjust their tinfoil hat.
Yeah, because the ultimate buyer is not going to be worried about the current price of copper when they're looking at a mine development for years of production.
Well, again, I think history is, coronavirus, yes, it is a bit different. Having said that, I worked in China during the SARS crisis and believe that it knocked me down for about 4 or 5 days in a sweating fever that was the worst thing I've come across. So hopefully I've got a little bit of resistance to coronaviruses. But the point around that is that these things pass. And when they pass, the world economy prior to this coronavirus was looking pretty good. U.S. industrial production was looking pretty good. China was looking okay. Europe was looking okay. Italy was a bit of a basket case. But on an overall sense, things were looking pretty good. And so I don't think people, in terms of the forward copper price, need to get caught up in the moment. Markets are forward-looking, and I think that when we are in the valley of this thing, where it's looking worse, is when the markets will be looking forward and saying, okay, well, we can see that we're going to start to come out and the trajectory is up, and they'll start pricing that in. That's how markets work. And as I say, it does appear, early indications are that China is starting to come out of the crisis. And so they were the first in, they're the first out, and that is the pattern that the rest of the planet will go through, albeit, most of the Western world has yet to get to the depths of where it's going to be, and it's going to be tough times, and unfortunately some people will lose loved ones, but I think that the harsh reality is that we will get through this, and at the other side, industrial production will pick up again, and copper price will recover. Even if you think in the context of, of all the programs that we've got to do in terms of drilling this thing out, geotechnical drill program, metallurgical test work, permitting, design work, financing, construction, all of that, in terms of producing copper metal, we're a number of years out yet. And to use the context of current events to say that that's going to inform where we're going to be at in 5 years' time is ridiculous, because we've come through these things before.
Yeah. Okay. Any last comments?
Play the long game.
Yeah, play the long game. Exactly. Keep your wits about you and look forward. Any last final comments? I think you've pretty summed it up pretty well.
Yeah. Look, I think you play the long game. We're all in this together. The company's in a good position, and if you don't have to sell, put it in the bottom drawer, and I think things will look a lot rosier by the end of the year at least. So, anyways, it's we just got to get through this, and we got to look after each other, and just maintain your dignity.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, all the best to you and the family. Hope everything's well, and that you guys stay safe.
Likewise to everybody, all our shareholders. Stay safe and look after yourselves and your families, and we'll come through this.
Good stuff. Okay. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you very much, Savannah.
Cheers.
Have a good day.
Bye. All right, guys, there you go. I hope that was helpful and informative. As Chris said, there'll be another announcement coming reasonably soon with the Mathena results, and hopefully some results down at Thursday's Gossan as well. As always, I hope I've helped you, and may I wish you all profitable investing. Good night.